Okay, recording has started. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Cinder Ussuri virtual PTG. And let's, oh yeah, somebody's starting an attendees list. That's kind of useful. So please add your name near the top of the Etherpad. And all right, so the kickoff and sound check. Great, everyone can hear okay, and we can hear each other, so that's good. You're aware it's going to be recorded. That's good too. I just wanted to bring up some upcoming deadlines because milestone 1 is like surprisingly close, at least surprising to me. So it's 2 weeks basically. So it's December 12th. So just so you're aware of that, I guess main thing we'd like to do there is try to take care of deprecations and stuff. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. The spec freeze is January 31st. So that's like 2 weeks before the milestone 2. And then milestone 2 is February 13th, and that's also the new driver merge deadline. So I should probably send out a thing to the mailing list just in case somebody wants to put in a new driver. I don't, well, yeah, they would tell, well, yeah. As far as like drivers being removed, Brocade is no longer going to support their driver, and they let us know today that they don't even have bandwidth to remove their driver. So, well, that should be relatively easy to take care of ourselves. And I guess that's basically it.
So are you planning to, who's planning on removing that?
I was going to do that, or we can discuss it tomorrow, unless somebody, I haven't removed a driver yet, so I was going to do it. But
maybe
I know you have.
Yeah, so maybe it's a good opportunity for you to try one, and I'll review it and make sure it all looks good.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, make sure I hit all the stuff. All right, and then my dog is on the floor here in an inconvenient place. So that's, if I keep looking down, I'm trying not to step on her while I, okay. All right, great. Yeah, so we'll go that way with Brocade. And then I'm just going to do a review later today of the, there's a whole bunch of deprecated options, but it looks like a lot of them are driver specific and not general Cinder options. So I'll just take a quick look at that to report back on Wednesday. Okay, so first session, real session up here is just a recap of Jay's forum session on are you using upgrade checks? So Jay, take it away.
Oh, all right. Oh, I obviously forgot to prepare for this. So I apologize. Are you using upgrade checks? Did nobody take notes during that session?
It's possible that nobody did.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, so basically what happened from my memory, or you want to just give it a quick one?
No, go ahead, and I will. It's too bad we don't have notes because a lot happened during that session. So let's maybe figure out what.
Okay. So I mean, the key thing we're interested in was did anybody find the upgrade checks useful? And in particular, the ones that we were supplying. And then there was this other issue that Eric had raised about whether the upgrade checking is happening in the wrong release. Because we put the upgrade check saying, looking for what you have to do from Stein to train in train, but you need to have train available in order to look at your stuff from Stein, which doesn't seem to quite make sense. So we floated the idea that maybe we should backport them and then the checks will be in Stein. But one of the operators there basically stood up and shouted and said, no, do not do that. So, but the basic idea was that he just said, look, it's a pain in the neck to do any type of upgrade. And if you put the upgrade checks in like a point release of the previous release, nobody's going to want to actually upgrade to get the checks, which you don't really need to do. But I think it's because there's confusion about exactly how you should run these things. And so what we sort of came around to was that what we really need, well, we came around to two things. So there were a couple of Nova people there, Zane Bitter and Sylvain, and they were saying, look, you're only supposed to be looking for these particular things. But then it turned out with the community goals, everybody's looking for all sorts of different stuff. So we need to sort of, right, because there was a question of, do you require the APIs to be running in order to do this? And they were insisting you didn't, and then it turned out that, yeah, actually for some of the checks you do. So to sort of circle around to what I think we decided, the idea is that we need OpenStack, need some type of tooling that will run these upgrade checks. And that tooling doesn't exist currently, because right now what you got to do is go around to each service that provides the upgrade checks and then run them. So
right.
We need to provide some clearer documentation for the teams about what kind of stuff can go in here. And this happened for Cinder last time when you were going to have to install a driver in order to run the upgrade check. And Eric pointed out that was a really not a good idea. So we want to get some clarification about what are good upgrade checks, but then also push for tooling that will actually, I think the idea is to run, well, to have some sort of magical tool that can run all the upgrade checks so that an operator can just run this tool against their current deployment and then get the information they want about what they're going to need to modify or change or look out for before they actually do the upgrade. And that's basically it. So the nature of the tool is unspecified, although of course somebody mentioned a container. But that's basically what people wanted. So so basically the conclusion was, yeah, the upgrade checks are good. Everybody agreed they're useful to have. The idea that they needed to be backported, they didn't seem to think was important. But the tooling is a key thing. And I think that was basically it.
Yeah, so actually we found the notes. They were in a different Etherpad, so I updated the link.
Okay.
And I think I'm impressed that you remembered all of that. The action items we had were communicate to the community how these are supposed to work, review documentation, make sure it's clear how they should work. Need to work with deployment tools to get these checks added to upgrades and start discussion on the mailing list to raise awareness of the current issues.
Okay. And then I think we sort of pushed that all to you as a TC person, if I remember correctly.
That's right. That sounds correct.
Right.
So
go share your thoughts, Eric, since you were one of the ones that were invested in this as well.
Well, I'm skeptical of the claim that backporting is not something that people would want, because the assumption that goes along with that is that it's hard to upgrade a point release, but somehow it's easy to install another instance of Cinder somewhere before you've actually done the upgrade to run this code. Unless the alternative was actually just make a whole different tool, like you guys were talking about. I don't know. That's not a very convincing argument against it, in my opinion, against the backport idea. But
well, I guess so. Also in favor of the backport idea would be if you're upgrading Dyn, then you would have the ones for train there if you're going to upgrade to train. I don't know. I mean, I think I think the best thing is this idea of a tool, because the other thing that came up was that people are afraid if they actually download and install a new version of OpenStack, even on a test node, they may somehow contaminate or mess up their actual deployment.
Well, and
And that was a
I'm
real,
still wondering, like,
okay.
I'm still wondering how people successfully do that. Like, it seems like a very messy thing to do, and I mean, do people actually successfully do that now, or are we just still
So
assuming that that
it,
works?
it kind of sounds like nobody's using this right now,
Because what would
was the
happen
impression.
would
Yeah,
be, I mean, you would download if you were going to test an upgrade from Stein to Train, you would download a Train version of Cinder, and then what do you end up upgrading the database schemas to the Train database schemas as part of that process too, and then run the upgrade check once you've already like started upgrading some stuff. I'm having trouble
Yeah.
seeing how that would actually work. Like it doesn't make a ton of sense.
And for some reason the ops guys were actually like, oh yeah, that's fine. It sounds like they're assuming they're going to do it in some sort of virtual environment separate from their system, which I mean surprised me.
I mean, that makes sense if you have like a test cloud that's a whole different cloud, but I don't know how you even do that on the same upgrading.
yeah, maybe the next step here is, Jay, you could circulate something on the, I don't know if there's an operators list anymore, or if it's everybody's in OpenStack discuss with just like an ops tag or something.
Yeah, that's what I think it is now.
Yeah, maybe just circulate something saying you'd like to, you'd just like to know if anyone has actually, any operator has used any of the upgrade checks, whether successfully or not, just so you can find out how they did it or how they tried it. And maybe that'll give us a start for where to go. And then,
The other too is, are these designed in a way where they're actually consumable by deployment and upgrade tools, whether it's ours or any other one that's out there? I mean, presumably people that are running real clouds aren't just upgrading Python packages by hand. Um, they have some kind of tooling that's driving all this stuff. And, does this
right.
system actually function in a way that you can integrate with any kind of deployment stuff that people actually use? Would be good to know.
Yeah.
That was kind of the goal of having this as a cycle goal, is that the deployment tooling, all of the deployment tooling could start to assume that there were these upgrade checks for every service. So I don't know if any of them have actually tried to pick it all up and make it a part of the normal upgrade process.
Well, it seems tricky because the current design, if we looked at something like O, I would think that you would have to be so far into the upgrade by the time you could actually run them that it would be hard to really do it in a sensible way.
Well, and that was the original vision of this. Is it wasn't something that you do, oh, can I upgrade? Is everything going to be good? Oh, nope, I guess I'm not going to do that. It's you do the upgrade, you run the upgrade check to validate that the upgrade was okay before you start up services and start having things blow up. And then once you get that comfort level that, okay, things look okay, I can proceed, then start up services and continue on. So it was just kind of a step along the upgrade process in the middle of the process. And I think it's people are looking at it now as more of a pre-check.
Yeah, that's how I was thinking of it. So I'm okay. I had the wrong view of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's a lot more
so
defined scope than I had in mind.
Yeah.
Too.
And to be fair, when I went back and reread the cycle goal, it was not clear in there. So I know that from the discussions that happened at the time, but it wasn't captured into what we were communicating out to everyone as what we were trying to accomplish.
All right. Yeah. So I guess, Jay, also, I'm not sure where the documentation for this would live. I guess that's another issue is, so we all agree we need some kind of documentation about what exactly you're supposed to be, the teams should be doing as, right, in conceptualizing the upgrade check and then also implementing it in the, what's it, Cinder status, I guess it's service-status command.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that seems like TC stuff.
Way to delegate. Yeah, so okay. So it sounds like I need to take this and follow up with an email to the mailing list, see if people are using it, look at the documentation that's out there, try to make more sense of it. And then I don't know, the unfortunate thing is for Cinder, I mean, I think we were hoping that it could be used to like catch issues that are going to break before you upgrade. Though I guess if it's running in the middle of the upgrade process, there isn't much we can do other than raise flags as to things that may break you after you're already partially broken. But
well, so we may need to rethink what kind of checks are actually appropriate to do because I'm thinking through, like, I was looking at checks that we have. So if we run a check that detects if you're configured to use a driver that's been removed from Cinder, so you get partway through the upgrade process and it fails and says you are using a driver that's been removed, what is the admin supposed to actually do at that point?
Supposed to migrate all their stuff to a supported backend, right?
That kind of stuff was why I was thinking about the backporting them idea, because if you ran that before you did anything, you can actually act on it, I guess. But if you fail like halfway through the upgrade on that, you're kind of already stranded there. So I don't know.
Right. So we went down a rabbit hole of pre-checks and like adding a pre-check mechanism, which I don't know how terribly interested people were actually in that. But we actually talked about that specific situation for a while, and they're like, well, you can, if you guys want to backport checks, then you can do that and tell people to run the checks before they upgrade, but then we're branching from what everybody else is recommending they do. So, I mean, if I remember correctly, they kind of sent us away with a, you guys go talk about it and figure out how you want to use them. And yeah.
It is part of the Cinder status command, so we could add a new subcommand of a pre-check. That could make sense of something that we backport.
Yeah, but I think to support the backport idea, we're going to have a bunch of policies about what exactly these can do and not do, and what kind of checks will actually know that they work. Circumstance.
Well, I guess so. Then, I guess the question I'm interested in is what do we do in this development cycle? And I would suggest just doing what we've been doing at the same time as everyone else is figuring out how this should go. So, because I think that the checks that we have for the drivers and stuff are useful. And we've had some that check configuration options and give warnings if something's changed. So I think those are all useful things. And then as far as like how you consume them, I don't have a good answer to that.
So one thing we could do that would at least help a little bit is like with the driver removal case is to when we, how do I word this? So when we mark a driver as unsupported, add an upgrade check that throws a warning so that they're aware that, that way we're at least not expecting them to go and look at their log files. This is a more explicit warning as part of the upgrade that, hey, your driver is going to be removed in the next release. Remember, you need to migrate your data before you upgrade again. It's not great, but it's at least, another slap in the face that there's a problem there. Maybe that's redundant, though. I don't know. No, actually, that's better because it's a better UX because they'll at least get a warning at upgrade time that, hey, I need to go put this in my config file. It's not one of those where it's going to fail on startup and then they have to go dig around and figure out why.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
Yeah. So that's one way that we can improve that a little bit.
Okay.
That makes sense to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's just you have a driver configured that is not going to run unless you take this additional action. Seems like a good message.
Yeah, and
okay.
And it's saving them from having it just fail and have to go look at the logs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll continue with those, and then we'll just consider stuff as it comes up. So if you make any changes that seem they would be useful to propagate out to operators in this manner, I guess go ahead and add an upgrade check, and then we can argue about it on the patch. Because there are probably some cases that we haven't thought of, and we'll see what happens.
Okay,
cool.
And I'll start discussion on the mailing list and try to kind of push this from a TC perspective. And, hopefully before Vancouver, we'll have something more to talk about.
Okay, great. Any additional comments or anything?
I apologize for not being more prepped on that discussion. I've been running in circles since the end of the summit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I sort of just dropped that on you because I figured you'd have the session Etherpad to work with. So, all right, good. So I think
you sabotaged me with a bad link.
I thought you put that link in there. Did I put it in? Sorry if I did.
I
don't know where I go. No, I may. All right. Anyway, I'll apologize. Okay. All right. Let's. All right. So Snapshot Co-location should be a quick one. Rajat, you're gonna talk about that.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So Glance recently supported a multi-store feature, and from Cinder now we can, like the patch is in review currently, but from Cinder side of view, we can specify a store ID in the volume type, and we can specify in which store we want to perform the volume upload to image operation. So currently it goes into the default store, whichever is set in Glance API conf, and we can specify after that feature. So the co-location feature, I see it as an extension to that. So whenever a volume is created from an image, then we have the image ID in the metadata, image metadata of the volume. So whenever we upload that type of volume to the imaging service, then we also pass the image ID to that. So it creates the volume in the same store that it was previously stored, the previous image was stored in. That makes any sense. So from Cinder point of view, it is fairly simple that we just have to pass the image ID in the header, and rest is up to the Glance.
the point of this is to support the edge stuff for glance. So
Yeah, I
they
missed
want
that.
to,
Sorry.
yeah. So yeah, so they just want to try to keep. This would be a lightweight way to keep things co-located. So you figure the image that something volume was built from is going to be located in the correct place for that particular edge. So then if we upload that volume as an image, Glance should keep it in the same place, and then that will be good for everybody. So
This is if you're using Cinder as a backend for Glance.
Could you repeat?
So, no, I think this is for the general case. So right. So I think whether or not you're using Cinder as a Glance backend, if you built the volume from an image out of Glance and had to download the volume, and then you create an image from the volume to use again, you just want that volume image to be in the same place as the original image, assuming that everything else has worked correctly.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we're assuming that somehow Glance knows what to do and Nova knows what to do.
What is the word snapshot referring to in this? What's the snapshot?
Yeah, we should probably, that doesn't seem to be the correct terminology.
Actually, the use case arrived from a VM. So whenever we have a volume packed VM and we create a snapshot and then upload as an image.
So that's a Nova instant snapshot, not anything in Cinder or Glance itself, right?
Yeah, so then that works slightly differently, right?
I think we need to rename that for Cinder case.
Well, because there are two things, right? With the when Nova, if you boot from volume in Nova and then you do the Nova create image action, what it does is it creates the volume in Cinder, right? And then creates a 0-byte image in Glance that just has the mount point data on it as metadata. So we may need to explore this a little more carefully about what exactly. Because right in the VM snapshot case, Nova's doing everything, so we don't actually get involved in that at all, I believe.
So from our point of view, I think we can say it as an image co-location.
Right. So if the case we're interested in is somebody requesting that the image be uploaded, the volume be uploaded as an image, right? We would pass along this extra information, and then Glance would use it to decide where it should create in which of its stores it should create that image. Right, because now what happens is
it gets stored in the default store.
Right, okay.
So there are two.
But
I'm sorry.
I think the idea makes sense. I would just maybe try to describe it in the spec in a more Cinder Glance oriented way, because I read over it once or twice and it was kind of not clear exactly what was exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. At first I thought that what I just typed didn't make sense, but right. So you've created a volume from an image, you do some stuff with the volume, and you want to save it again. And I think that's the case we're interested in. So we would just pass along the image ID of the original image, and then Glance would know this new image has to be put in the same place, or whatever it wants to do. We really don't care. Okay. All right. So basically, the general idea sounds fine. We just want to be a little more precise on the spec about what exactly the use case is, and then that seems okay. Any other comments or anything? All right.
So I will be working on it from Cinder side.
Oh, you're going to, okay. Right. All right. And then after the meeting, I'll go ahead and I can either put this comment on the review or you can, Rashad, on the spec review. And then, yeah, the implementation should be pretty straightforward because we have all that information available. So.
Actually, it also depends on the Glance multi-store patch, so I think that needs to merge first before implementing this.
So I thought they were different, because I thought this was going to be passed in a header.
Yeah, but from Glance point of view, if we specify a store in volume type and also pass the image ID, then Glance has to decide the precedence, like which should be given the priority, which type of store. So
okay,
we need to have both from the Cinder side to pass to Glance so that they can figure out, like, they require both the parameters.
Okay, so we need to just put a note here. Okay. All right. All right. So Python 2 support removal. So what we discussed at Shanghai was basically I was completely wrong about what I wanted to do about this, which was I wanted to do no new Python. I wanted to keep Python 2 support for several cycles until all the EM releases had gone to end of life. But Sean pointed out that the libraries we try to use are going to stop supporting Python 2, and so all sorts of stuff would break. So it just wasn't a reasonable thing. And Yvonne and Sean were just itching to get 6 out of there. And then Gorka also said he didn't think that because my main thing was, the backports are going to be a problem, possibly, right? Because into master, we can merge stuff that uses Python 3 only language features, whereas, the backports have to support Python 2. But, we'll have to deal with that at the time. So basically, in the summary of the Shanghai PTG, I did put a couple of points that I should probably locate and say. But basically the idea is, as you're reviewing this stuff, if you, or writing, right? So if you're writing code that you think is going to be backported, just be aware that you want to make sure you're using Python 2 only language constructs so that you can do things. Now, if Yvonne and Sean rip 6 out, then you're not going to be able to do that, but I guess that's something to be aware of. Well, we'll just have to deal with it, right? It's just part of the transition. So just be aware if it's a bug fix and you want to backport it, just be aware that you may have issues when you go to try to put it into the stable branch. And if you're aware of those when you're writing the code, it should be easier to fix problems when you actually do the backport. As far as new features, let's just start taking advantage of the modern Pythons. So the supported runtimes for Ussuri are 3.6 and 3.7. So don't go nuts with Python 3 things. So because we do have to support 3.6. But that does give you a lot of things that we didn't have in Python 2. And all right, so what I've got going on now is I got a patch up that's been -1 by Zool, so I got to go look at it. And then Ghanshyam left a whole bunch of comments on it, so I'll fix that. So we'll get the Python 2 testing out of master, and then that way we should be okay as ourselves. Yeah, and I guess what brought this up was that Nova merged a patch that made Nova Python 3 only, and it just broke stuff everywhere. So Luigi put up a reversion of that, a partial reversion. So what we've got now, so we're going to do the same thing. We'll change the classifiers and set up .cfg to say that we don't support Python 2, but we won't put, there's something you can put in there to say that you must use Python 3.6 or greater. So we won't do that until January, until stuff has been sorted out. So Cinder would still be installable under Python 2, but we won't claim that we support Python 2 anymore because we aren't going to be doing any testing. And then I think I've got to go through the patch I've got up. I think we've got all the stuff that would run Python 2 out of there. So we should be okay, and other stuff shouldn't break us, possibly. But that's a setup. So anyway, so once we've got the testing stuff set up, I'll put up patches for the other Cinder components. We'll do the same thing, and then anyone who wants to start ripping out Python 2 support, so like 6, for instance, can go ahead and start doing that. So that's basically what we agreed on. I don't know if anyone has any contrary opinions they want to express. I will shut up now.
So even if we decide to leave 6 in Cinder, we can be sure that everything will work okay with Python 2, because Cinder dependency probably will remove Python 2 support soon, like Oslo libraries or any third-party libraries, not even OpenStack libraries, I mean. So if we start with Python 2 syntax only, it does not mean that everything will work with Python 2. It only means that it will be easier to do backports.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so things are going to possibly be a mess till all this gets shaken out. So, yeah, you just have to be a little patient with the gates, possibly.
Yes. You may know I've got a lot of Python 2 in our downstream, like older OpenStack versions, but even with this, I support to add Python 3 syntax, because I'm pretty sure that some typing on our APIs will help a lot for to fix some issues or to not introduce a new one.
Yeah. All right, so we got the brave new world of Python 3. So there we go. All right, that's basically all I had on that. Any other observations or warnings people want to put out there? Okay, all right. Eric, I guess you're up next with the size of encrypted volumes.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to, I guess, throw this question out for the hive mind here and see if anybody's got any brilliant ideas, or if not, something we can just start thinking about. Been a couple of bugs recently that have shown up. I guess for years we have been kind of playing fast and loose with the fact that when you create a LUKS encrypted volume, the size of the volume that the end user gets when they attach it to an instance is smaller than the actual original volume because you lose a little bit, some number of kilobytes due to the LUKS headers and metadata. This generally seems to have been working okay because people have been using encrypted volumes for years and we haven't heard any complaints in this area. But there's been a couple of bugs that showed up lately around, I think the LVM one was a migration bug. The RBD one was a simpler problem that happened when you cloned an encrypted volume from a snapshot and made a new volume, and you would end up with a disk geometry error in the instance because the volume minus the encryption overhead, so the actual usable space of the volume was smaller than the disk was described as. So the first one of these cropped up in LVM. The submitter wanted to fix it by, I think, basically when you create an LVM volume, if it's encrypted, just make it a little bit bigger than you asked for so that you have room flex metadata, which sounds kind of reasonable until you start thinking about the fact that then you have a 1 gig volume on LVM that's actually bigger than 1 gig. Then if you want to migrate it to some other backend, you're going to create a 1 gig volume, and that's not going to fit in there because it's not actually 1 gig. So I think we're going to have to kind of agree on some Cinder-wide standard for how to handle this kind of space difference due to encryption, the data in general. So you could kind of go one of two ways. You could either go on all the drivers and try to say all the volumes that are encrypted are just a little bit bigger and try to line them all up, do about the same thing, which I don't even know. I suspect there's backends that you can't really do that because I think a lot of backends maybe don't even have granularity to make a volume like 20 megabytes bigger than a gigabyte or something. So then the other alternative is you kind of do what we've been doing now and just try to root out all the issues around it, where if a user says, give me an encrypted volume of X gigabytes, what that ends up meaning is they get X gigabytes from the back end and they lose a little bit of overhead for the encryption metadata. And the volume that they get when it's attached to an instance is slightly smaller than what they asked for, which is basically what's been happening in most cases already, I think. So I think that's generally probably okay for us to do. We'll just need to kind of root out the details of what that means everywhere, because so far we've kind of just been pretending that it's like not a thing. And I think we're going to have to figure out how to test different backends to make sure we don't have issues related to this. And we'll have to understand things like if you have a glance image that says it requires a volume of X gigabytes, maybe it actually requires slightly more if you're using encrypted volumes, so we need to figure that out and document it. So I don't know, it's kind of a messy thing, but wanted to kind of get that out there for awareness and see if anybody had any particular thoughts or opinions or whatever. I think I'm going to write a spec up to kind of cover this stuff and propose what I think we should do.
Look at your proposed patch to LVM and CF drivers. I'm concerned that probably we have to think and find some generic way to test this and implement some generic checks on Cinder Manager. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with encrypted volumes functionality, but these patches show us that we probably will have the same issues per each backend, and fixing only particular backends will lead to a lot of bugs reported to Cinder. And, I don't know how we can do it in general, but at least we need to think about this.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll take a to-do to get write up a spec on what I think will maybe work, and then we can kind of tear it apart from there and see where we end up.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, that sounds like the way to go in this. Yeah, once we have a specific proposal, we can circulate it and see if it makes sense for the different backends. Yeah, and then glance. So we work in gigabyte chunks as far as like assigning volume size, and glance actually works at bytes.
Yeah, I'm thinking from
So I don't know
that
what
part,
that means.
I think what that's going to mean is we're actually just going to have to check that if you're writing a glance image to an encrypted volume, we're going to have to check not that it just meets the minimum size, but it meets the minimum size plus some reason that we've determined makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else we could do. So there'd be situations in which if you try to cut it too close, you're not going to be able to build your volume. But that's, I guess, I guess as long as it's documented, if you're using encrypted volumes, you're just going to have to be aware of a few caveats.
Yeah, okay. Which there's already a few of those, so
yeah,
I guess we'll add more to that list.
All right, cool. All right, any other general comments? Okay. I should wait a minute. Okay. All right, I'm up again. So user messages. So I think there's a link to a patch on the Etherpad. And I think this is a patch that, right, is proposed. Okay. Sorry, I just needed to scroll the Etherpad. Okay. So what's happened here, somebody wanted to add, make use of the user messages, which we in general encourage, but it was going to give a message about an administrative action. So the manage API in the default policies is an admin API kind of thing. So we expect only administrators to be doing this type of action. But The user messages are an end user facing thing. So what's going to happen is that in the list of messages that an end user could look at, they will discover that somebody has been trying to manage their volume unsuccessfully. So, so the first thing was just probably for administrative actions, right? Since this is supposed to be a cloud, right? The end user shouldn't have to know if they've been evacuated or anything. As long as their stuff is working, they shouldn't really have to care about that kind of stuff. So we would be leaking out some information that the administrator was doing something with their volume that they shouldn't care about. So that's probably something we don't want to let them know. On the other hand, the user messages are pretty good about, I mean, they don't expose direct information from either an exception or the log message content. They're messages that are generic enough so that they don't have, they don't leak. I don't know how to put this. They don't leak stuff, but on the other hand, they're specific enough so that you know better what's going on than that your volume is just in an error state. So that's the general idea of that. Okay, so anyway, so Sean had -2 this patch saying we don't want to do this because it's leaking in action. So I think that's in general the right approach, that we don't want to leak these. On the other hand, it might be more useful to operators to be able to see these via user messages than having to dig through the logs, was the general idea. But then on the third hand, when I was looking into this, we already do leak one of these actions. So if you're trying to manage an encrypted volume, we don't support that, and the user message is created right now. So we are sort of leaking some. So we're not leaking information that anyone can do anything with. It's more that now the end user knows that the operator was trying to do some maintenance or something that didn't succeed, which could confuse them. Anyway, I guess just shut up and say the point of this is just, what do we want to do about it? So we can either have a policy that we're not going to put any kind of user messages for admin only actions, or we could say that we'll use the administrative context to decide when you list a user's user messages, what shows up in there. So if anyone has a strong opinion, we could say it now, or we could just say, please look at this review and put some comments on there about where you think we should go. Because
yes, I generally agree with Sean. So we should not expose such information to all users. But what you just say, Brian, it makes sense to me. So probably in a long-term perspective, we can split our user messages to user messages and admin messages, maybe. So to help operators understand what actually went wrong.
Yeah, there'll be several ways we could do that.
Oh,
okay.
Really?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to have messages that are, you have to be privileged to see them. We don't have any infrastructure to do that in the code at the moment, but it would make sense. I mean, I guess this shows up as a user if you just run message list, show me all the stuff, all the messages that are related to me, would be where you would see this.
Right.
So it would make sense, I think, to add some capability where messages that are admin actions don't show up unless you are an admin querying for them. I do
So the
think,
next question. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's a little bit of overloading of the term user. I mean, we're talking about user versus admin. I think in the feature user messages, it really just means any user of the API, which could be a user or an admin. So it's kind of easy to trip up over the terminology, but it makes a lot of sense to have API support for admin stuff, because otherwise you have some large scale operation and you don't have the ability to see the stuff from the client as an admin.
Yes, we can do the same way like we do for volume show. Regular users see only few items, and admin users see volume host, backend, etc.
Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think the general idea would be that if you have an operation that was initiated by an admin that generates one of these, you want to record that in the user messages table and say, this was a privileged operation, give it a special flag. And you can use that to determine what you show in the APIs later.
Okay, I wasn't quite thinking of that, but that. And then I guess the other question that would come up is if we're going to have. Let me back up. So our policy up to now has been to keep these messages relatively innocuous, so they're informative, so the user knows roughly what's happened, but not so informative that we're exposing any kind of, certainly no secrets, but basically nothing you could do any harm with. Now, should we keep that policy even for administrators? Because at the time, if we're creating a message and we know it's an admin message because we put this flag in it, then we could provide more details. On the other hand, I mean, I'm putting that out there, although I'm against it, because I guess I'd say as long as this would be helpful if it points you in the right direction, and then you go to what to look for in the logs, is my first impression. On the other hand, if we do know that only somebody with administrative credentials is going to see this, then we could just expose the actual exception in the message, which we don't do now because we don't want to leak anything. I mean, we can argue about this later, but that's, I guess the question is how.
I think it's a reasonable idea, but I think probably just for ease of implementation, if nothing else, it'd probably be good to just keep it with the same scheme we have now for adding admin messages to this.
All right, okay, good. Yeah, I like that all right, because we can always enhance this. Excuse me, my dog is just, what is this? Okay, sorry. I don't know what the heck she just chewed. All right. All right, so anyway, what I was going to say was so the first step, somebody wants to put together a spec for this, and I might be willing to do that. We'll just expose admin actions to admins, sticking with the current policy for user messages. And then if those turn out not to be quite as useful for operators as we are anticipating, we will, deal with it then, and then we can expose more stuff. But that seems like a good way to go. We don't have to settle too much right now. Let's see. Okay, so let me put some info in the Etherpad.
Does anybody know if there's a precedent in other projects for this?
It would be interesting to go look and see what they do with the Nova fault stuff. I don't know if they've addressed this kind of concern or not.
There was a discussion on the mailing list kind of recently, and they were suggesting maybe including the exception class in the message so that you'd know what, I guess it would give you more details about what had happened, but not actually expose the exception message because that could leak information. So I guess sort of reading between the lines there, they must not expose too much stuff in those, where they're like the image, the server actions or something.
The way that we've implemented this so far, I'm not sure that giving the exception class would actually give you any more info, because I think the messages are pretty much one-to-one with exceptions anyway.
Yeah, so I think as far as we're going, I think we're at the forefront of this, basically.
Okay.
I just realized I'm talking on mute. Okay. Any other comments on this one? Okay. Third-party CI irregularities. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I want to mention that I think we can do this without new Mac versions.
Oh. Yeah, because there's nothing new in the request. We'll just use the context to decide what to do, and it won't change the format of the messages or anything. I think you're right. All right, so let me just put a note on that though.
Yeah, I think that is right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Didn't get my shift. All right. That's good. Okay. All right. So the third-party CI irregularities, as we all know, I guess I won't, not to put too fine a point on it, they seem pretty flaky, right? Some things work and then some things don't a lot. So that doesn't seem good. What we want to do is try to figure out how we can, regularize these irregularities, basically. So, okay, good. So Yvonne is already putting info on here. So basically, what I wanted to do was get more people thinking about this and possibly volunteers to do something. So Yvonne is going to look to see who's using the Cinder Tempest plugin. So the Cinder Tempest plugin is available. I don't think we require third-party CIs to run it.
Well, we also did state that we was.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But whether anyone actually is or not, that's
is the question. Okay.
I think I know the answer to that.
And what do you think?
Maybe one or two are actually doing it, but I highly doubt it. We do have it documented as under the driver requirements. I think maybe some of the documentation is out of date because some of the ways that the plugin is run has changed, but no one, as far as I know, none of us have actually taken the effort to look at every CI and make sure they are actually doing what we said they should be doing.
Okay. All right. So then it's still worth looking into. Yeah, that was my impression too. So I think now Luigi had mentioned, not to put you on the spot, Luigi, but that possible that the RDO software factory could be used as a basis to run the third-party CIs. Because I think my impression from, so we had, Jay had to deal with this in the last cycle, right? We asked everyone to go Python 3, and of course, everybody waited to the last minute to change Python 3, and then it turned out to be way more complicated than anyone had anticipated. which shouldn't necessarily be the case, but it is. And my thought is, if we want to enforce, we're planning to get more tests into the Cinder Tempest plugin, which is great. And then we'll want the third-party CIs to be running these, because that'll give us a lot more information about whether stuff is working or not, and also, right, the driver maintainers. So that would be great. But I'm kind of hesitant to impose more stuff that you have to do if we don't have it would be nice to be able to provide more support so that people can concentrate more on the stuff that's useful than on the infrastructure, I guess. That being said, I have no idea how to make that happen. So I'm hoping Luigi's got some ideas, and that maybe we can leverage some of this stuff to make the vendors' lives easier, so that they'll be more likely to keep these things going. Because it seems like the general model of running the CI might be possibly a problem. Just thinking from the fact that, right, so many of them, there's so many failures, and then suddenly you get a pass. And it seems like a lot of the failures aren't related to, right, the patch being tested. It's more of an infrastructure kind of problem. So I guess I should just shut up. So you basically know my feelings about this. So what I'd like us to do is try to get on a path where we can do something useful for vendors, but I personally don't know what or how. So I'll toss that out there. So Luigi, you got any general observations? I said I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I will.
I just tossed up the idea of using the software factory as a possible base for creating the CI. I hadn't figured out. I haven't investigated more about this. Maybe the starting point could be just asking on the RDO channel, for example, when they have the weekly meeting, because I think that I'm pretty sure they're using the software factory itself as the base for the RDO third-party CI, which is also running O jobs. So it's something more complicated than what the vendors are probably going to do, which is just running DevStack, at least now.
Right.
I mean, it's something that is going to be, it's maintained, and it's going to be maintained, for what I understand. So, and the idea is that it should really be out of the box, or almost out of the box. Then, of course, you may need to configure your jobs and whatever, but at least the basic structure should be ready to work.
Yeah, because if we get, if everyone's sort of using the same basic stuff, then it should be easier for everyone to, right, in the Cinder community anyway, to give advice back and forth about good ways to get it configured and get it running. So I think this is definitely worth doing. Now, Luigi, I don't know what your time commitments are. Can you go to the RDO? Do you attend the RDO meetings, or
I'm on the channel. I'm on the channel, okay. And I see when they happen. So I just need to remember to start speaking during the next meeting, which should be. Let me see. On Wednesday. The time may be changed.
Conflicts with this.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So actually, when you can, if you don't mind following up and getting some feedback from RDO about the general idea or what direction we should go, that'd be great. And then we can pick this up, at the Cinder meeting after you get some information and figure out what to do. So anyway, this is just an awareness topic. So it would be good to get this going in a direction that'll help out operators, because I think that'll make our whole situation a lot better. So basically at this point, not much to say other than that, which is already too much. Okay. About that. Okay. All right. Let's see. We want to talk about extending the default volume type support. And Rajat, that was you. Would you get down? Okay.
So I won't be doing this. Actually, the main idea of this is that we have created a default type, but it is same for all projects. So we discussed regarding extending the support for a per tenant per user basis, and Gorka will be writing a spec for it, and I think someone from Simon's company will be working on it. And
yeah, we need to follow up with Simon because he said he thought he had somebody, but he hasn't gotten back to us at all about that. Okay.
so if no one
Yeah,
will be working on it, then I can work on the implementation part. As Gorka, I talked to Gorka and he said that he will be writing the spec for it.
Okay. All right, good. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, I guess everybody here was actually at the Shanghai PTG. I mean, the basic idea was just what Rajat said. So we do now require there to be a default volume type, but it might not have a lot of stuff in it. There have been some situations where it would be really useful to have a project be able to specify the volume type. So usually for something, they may want all the stuff for this project to go into a particular backend or something like that. But right now, you can't do that unless you do some crazy kind of workarounds that are very inelegant. So this sounds like something worth doing. And then there was Glance had a request that maybe I forget what the request was. It's in the PTG summary though, so it would complicate this slightly. It's one other situation in which you might want to be able to specify a default volume type, but I can't remember what it is. Okay, great. But we got people working on it, so that's cool. So nothing to worry about there. Okay.
Brian, were you thinking
Eric,
of the? Sorry, were you thinking of the? There were some people that were looking at having a default volume type per project.
Yeah, I think that's this. And then there was something, Glance had a use case, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it'll show up as we work this out. Okay. All right. Next topic is quotas. Eric posted a bug there. Take it away, Eric.
I don't really know what all I want to say about this. Everything related to quotas is broken. No, it's there's a whole bunch of different. Well, I don't know. There's a whole bunch. There's some very complicated fixed race conditions in our quota system. I put a patch here where I fixed one of the easy ones. It's shown up for I think both our QA and at least one or two of our customers, which may knock out one of the easy to fix ones. I will say I'm not a huge patch, but a decent start. I'm not a huge fan of it just because I think it may end a little bit of per volume create API call overhead, a little bit sluggish than we would prefer, but that may be better than having quotas be wrong. Longer term on this, I think I'm going to get back to working on this whole area at some point. I would love if anyone else wants to volunteer, get into it. But the fundamental problem with the quota stuff is we have some kind of multi-staged double accounting kind of system where we have volumes in one table and we have quota usages in another table and we have reservation. You create a volume, there's a bunch of things that happen that update each one of these independently of each other. And race conditions can occur on creation and deletion where you end up with things like the quotas table saying that you were using -4 gigabytes of space of your quota, the stuff where the math goes sideways. My intention is to replace a lot of the update multiple database tables logic in there to do something more like dynamically query the volumes table anytime we want to count things like how much quota am I actually using, which should alleviate most of the race condition kind of stuff in there, I think. But it's very complicated and it's going to be a ton of code fix. So if anybody is excited about doing that, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I will get to it at some point. Other than that, I don't really know what else to say other than this. It has been a source of bugs in our product for ever since we've shipped Cinder, I think. We've had people that run into this stuff. And people have engineered all kinds of, here's a Python script to go run that will fix your quota tables in your Cinder database, which is not ideal for anybody. But I think a lot of customers.
Yeah, CERN has a script. Yeah, CERN has a script in GitHub.
Yeah, there's one or two of them that are published in GitHub and different places that are, out there. But it would be a lot better to just make Cinder, right, and not need that stuff. So I'm going to go poke around in this area some. If anybody wants to help, it would be appreciated for sure, I guess. Other than that, I don't know that I have a lot of interesting stuff to say about it today.
Yeah, okay.
There may be a way to optimize.
So if anybody decides they want to.
Yeah, so there may be a way to optimize that patch that I posted if you have enough knowledge and desire to poke around in a out of our database layer. But I haven't really. Just adding the lock there is pretty easy so far. But see what Gorka says when he comes back from vacation about it.
Right. All right, good. Well, it'd be nice to start getting the quotas a bit more. It's like I know there's a patch up there that was, I think anytime it saw a negative, it was going to replace it with a 0. maybe in the response. So yeah, so people have definitely been seeing this problem. Yeah, that patch got -2'd, but
there's also some interesting comments in our quota code that say things like, well, let's not worry about race conditions here. A lock that I added.
right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I guess now it's time to start worrying.
Yeah. That's the summary of my talk. Everyone should worry about this.
All right, good. Any other observations or anything? Okay. All right, so then EOLing some branches. So we've got, all right, so yeah. At some point, I took an action item to find out from operators. So we got 9 branches open right now. And it would be nice to not have that many. So I put out a thing on the mailing list saying, hey, we want to at least close driverfixes, Mitaka and Newton, and stable O and P. What the heck? And nobody responded. So I'm assuming closing those is not something that anybody is too up in arms about. Now, I looked, so Sean actually had a patch merge Friday morning while I was asking people in the TC about this. So what came up in Shanghai was that there was a 6-month waiting period to transition from extended maintenance to being able to EOL a branch. That is not the case anymore. We can just declare that we're going to EOL a branch and bam, that's it. So that's kind of cool. So we don't have to, if we want to close them, we can do it without 6 months notice. Now, the other thing that came up was there were sort of 2 comments. Now, one of them, I think I was misunderstanding something that came up with the PTG. So I want to raise this, but I should probably write it down. So the question was, if we EOL, for instance, like driverfixes Newton, where we've backported fixes for drivers that, we don't do any releases from those branches, but if somebody needed a fix because they're running Newton and there's been a backported fix, they can just go get it by just checking out that branch. Now, I believe if we tag those right where they are now, we tag them at the head, we can delete the branch, but the concern was, would we lose the series of commits that were put into that branch that people could pull out and use? And I think the answer is no, because the tag is going to have a reference to the commit at the head, so it won't get garbage collected. And then that commit is going to have references to its parents, so those won't get connected. And so that'll take them all the way back, I believe, to some place where we actually are still in the repo. So I don't think the pain in the neck, although this isn't really a pain in the neck, I don't think, right? Because you have to check out the Git repo anyway if you want to get any of these bug fixes. So what somebody would have to do if we delete driverfixes Newton, but tag it first, right? They would check out the Git repo, then they would check out that tag, and then they would look through the list of commits to find the driver fixes that they needed.
I just confirmed that I can check out Havana EOL. We don't have the stable Havana branch, so that appears to be correct.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, and I was poking around with Git K, and it does look like you get a bunch of commits that had been put into, like for instance, the Havana branch that aren't in whatever came after. What's after Icehouse. So it does seem, so it does seem okay. So I think we could do the regular end of life process where a tag gets created right at the current head of each of these things, and then the branch is deleted. And everybody can still use them. Now, the second question was something I didn't quite get a handle on. So somebody put a comment in the Etherpad, when we EOL a driver, we should probably make it a driver fixes branch. And I wasn't clear on that. So it does seem, right, because so our current thing is, like, for instance, with, right, Brocade is no longer supporting their driver. So we're going to remove it. If somebody's still running Brocade and wants to take the risk of using their driver, I guess what they have to do is they have to go back to what's train, and then they would have the driver code there, and then they would have to by themselves, right, grab it and bring it to their U installation if they wanted to try to continue to run Brocade.
Right.
So I think we're covered. I was just wondering, so I wasn't sure if there was a use case we wanted to handle, or whether I just misunderstood what the comment was on the Etherpad. And now I will shut up so people can talk.
I don't think I would. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm not sure the comment makes a whole ton of sense, but I was gonna point out that another reason that we may need to EOL driver fixes Newton anyway is that you can't actually land any more patches in there for a little while now. And I think the reason is everything that gets submitted to it fails unit test jobs, and I think it's because the unit test jobs for that branch will not function on Bionic nodes. And so I was pondering on whether we need to go adjust Zool jobs to keep them on old nodes and still work and whatever, but I don't know. It's a good data point that maybe it's time to just kick those off anyway.
If there was no response on the mailing list, I don't know why we wouldn't end of life them.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's been long enough now.
We were one of the biggest consumers for the Newton branch for our product, but we're not landing too many fixes in Newton at this point, so it's a lot less interesting for us than it was a while ago.
Now, Brian, you said earlier that someone said it's okay to immediately end of life a branch without a 6-month period.
Yeah, and I thought you were the person who put up that change.
Which change was that?
So let me find it. There's so I made the mistake this morning of deciding it would be great to have like a clean boot before we started doing blue jeans and stuff. So none of my stuff's open anymore. I had a discussion. Yeah, I did choose poorly. Yeah, and it didn't seem to like make blue jeans any more stable. So there was a discussion in the TC channel on Friday. So that's one place you can go. I had a link to it somewhere. But I was talking to Matt Riedemann in there, and he said, well, there's this language now where it says like comma, or the team decides it's no longer supported, and then you can EOL something. So, and I thought he pointed to a patch that put that in. I thought you were the author of the patch, but I may be mistaken and be thinking of something else. But
I just there's one I just put in the chat.
Okay.
And maybe my attempt at making things more clear made it more vague.
It makes it really good for us because look at this 223.
Yeah, and that was my
Um,
commit message. Team can go directly from EM to end of life without needing to wait 6 months.
yeah, so it got merged at like 9:30 Eastern time on Friday, because while I was talking to Matt about this, he said, well, it does say, or if you want to end of life it, and I couldn't see that anywhere. And they said, you need to refresh your browser window. And it turned out that had just merged. Yeah, so I think as far as I can tell, all I have to do is send out an email to the list saying this is about to happen, just in case, as a courtesy, anybody wants to freak out about it. But I think since the branches can be recreated, if you check out Git, then everything's cool.
Yeah. And definitely no question on those driver fixes branches, because those were, they're not real stable branches. Those were our own decision
Right.
to maintain a branch where we could keep things.
Yeah. So right. So that's right. So that review link that Sean put in there, right? That has merged, and that just says, or a team decides to explicitly end support for a branch, so it will become end of life. So we don't have to. It does. So I guess the thought now is we could explicitly say, hey, this branch is unmaintained, but that wasn't real clear to me that that's a useful thing to do. So it seems to be more like if you have a project that suddenly, like if we were not at a virtual PTG, but we're at an actual PTG altogether, and there was a major nuclear accident or something, Cinder would have to go into unmaintained status for 6 months until somebody decided to pick it up. But anyway, we can just go directly from EM to EOL. Okay, so I guess my only point then is that yes, we can do that. So I will put out a message to the mailing list saying that's our intention, and that I don't know, we can just, since we can do it at any time, I could give them a week's notice. If anyone has a final thing to say, but I don't know what. Yeah, and that would just be nice. I'll go ahead and do that. I don't think there's anything anyone can say that would convince us not to do this, but we can at least throw it out there.
And the reason that was added, why that period of having a transition between extended maintenance and end of life, that was added in there so that if some team really needed, Newton version of Cinder, and they were the only ones that cared about it, and the rest of the Cinder team did not, then someone outside of Cinder and outside of Cinder core could say, hey, we're going to take ownership of this stable branch and we're going to keep maintaining it.
Okay. All right. And then I guess we would just create a group in Garrett for them to handle all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I could mention on there that we'd be happy to let people who want to maintain the CI and keep it going do it.
I think we're fine, probably.
But anyway, yeah, I think so. I think after that initial, that initial email, since nobody reacted, I don't think anybody's going to react anymore. Okay, so let me slap down an action. So. Okay, great. And then the final thing, we've just got 4 minutes. So I'll make this quick. Because I got to admit, it was close to the end of the PTG for me. And so I mentioned this topic and then completely forgot what it is we were discussing and don't know. So I had this item, the support matrix, and I think Arcadia or somebody had said he thought multipath should be its own category in the support matrix. So I wasn't quite sure, so I threw it out there. And then I think Gorka, because this sounds like a Gorka comment, that we need to make clear exactly what multipath means, because I think people are claiming to support it without actually being able to do it. So his point was that a key feature that in order to be able to claim this feature, what you must be able to do is to have multiple data paths. But when one of them goes down, you should continue to function without there being a problem. And I think there have been some bugs where that hasn't quite been the case. So I guess we could push this to Wednesday. But does it make sense to introduce multipath as a category in the support matrix? I wasn't quite sure how to think about this.
If you wanted to, it may need to be called something different so that it doesn't get horribly confusing with RBD and NFS, which have similar capabilities but would not be called multipath probably. And
okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know that some people have asked for this and had pretty, legitimate reasons for wanting it. But to me, it always seems like if I'm someone that's setting up cloud, that's just part of the background I need to check is, am I buying storage that supports multipathing, and not really so much a Cinder feature. It's feature of the backend, and I need to buy the right kind of backend that gives me that.
yeah, because this isn't going to be a feature that we're going to like put in the matrix and then we're going to go demand everyone add to drivers or anything. So it is probably useful for people to figure out if drivers do it or not, but it's a little bit different from like, does this driver implement replication or something? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's just table it.
There are a couple of multi-path options in Nova that has to be set for this to be useful.
Okay. Thanks. All right, so then this doesn't, we'll wait for this to come up again though. So it sounds like, right, it's not just a simple matter of slapping in a new column. It would require more. Okay, cool. All right, so that, it's 16:59 according to my clock, so we're about to end. Thank you everyone for participating. If you get a chance to look at the Etherpad, please do, and add notes to, I tossed a few notes in there as I've thought of it, but we could probably use more clarifications, especially if there's anything you particularly are interested in. And then I know because there's a holiday in the USA on Thursday, not everybody will be here on Wednesday. So we may have a smaller group, but anyway, we'll meet again at Wednesday, same time as today, same bat place, and we'll just go through. We may end slightly early, hopefully. Etherpad. And that's basically it. Thank you very much for attending. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.
All right, I got another meeting to head.
See you guys.
Oh, Wednesday.
See you.
Sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, bye everyone.